So when we start trying to learn how to draw something, this is what we try to, this is what we do. We have to like kind of get its shape in our imagination so that we can draw it. So I'm dealing with a really really basic car shape. It's kind of cool that the early cars were so frequently built around they're so frequently built around squares and circles. And so the first thing that we want to do is we want to if I take this thing, what I never want to do is I never want to sit and copy a photograph. What I want to do is I want to use a photograph to help me start to think about the structure of something that I might not have insight into it if I didn't have a photograph around. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to start to deal with this vehicle in profile. And everybody kind of knows what profile is, I'm sure. Profile is this. This, when people talk about a point of view, that is portrait, and this is profile. Okay? So what I'm going to first try to deal with is I'm going to first start to deal with, I'm going to first start to think about this thing in profile. Okay, so in profile, we could say that there's one box, and that's where everybody sits. That's this box right here, and then there's and then there's another box underneath it, like this, and then there's a wheel, and then there's a wheel. Okay, so now I could start asking myself, well, what would some basic adjustments to that be that would make it closer? So okay, so the box that sits on top of it, what do I think the depth of it is before it hits that next box? So I think last time I made it too high. And how far back do you think it goes in comparison with the front of the car? Like, how does that feel? Now, let's say if I just took and went like that. That's starting to feel pretty good, but at the same time, this part right here is this part right here is still feeling just a little bit big. And I can make it feel a little smaller by making the other part a little bigger. So once I start to feel like, okay, wait a second now, I'm starting to understand this thing in profile, right? So what we've got is we've got one box like that, and another box like this, and this guy turns up here like that, this guy turns in here like this comes over. Look at, there's this great little thing here. One of the wheels on the front, one of the wheels looks very much on the back. So the wheels seem to be located on the corners. And then you've got this guy and this guy. And that's a pretty decent understanding of this thing so far as our profile understand, so far as just getting a profile understanding going. You could take it a little bit further. And throw in windows. Okay, but that's enough. Now, the next thing that I want to start to do then, now that I've kind of understood those guys in profile, is I'm going to start trying to think of it in 3D. Now, this is just really loose thinking, okay? I'm not considering this final drawing process. I'm not even really trying to draw this thing yet. But all I'm trying to do is just say, what's wrong with this? You know? Oopsies. I don't know why that happens. Okay. Let's see. Again, I'm really not trying to copy that photograph at all. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to understand the proportion of these shapes, of this one box and this other box, and then I could start trying to put the wheels on it. Okay, I'm starting to feel like I can kind of have that a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to move into our drawing process, the one that we talked about in our process video. So here I would ask of us, before we take on the final drawing of this thing, what I'd like to do is I'd like for us to start to do a couple small studies of the gesture. So if I was to say, this has a kind of gestural feeling, and it's something like, it's like there's an attitude in this thing. I'm trying to get a sense of that attitude. It's going to take me a couple goes. And notice this is like really loose drawing. And there's something, in my opinion, in the like the skinniness of what's right here, and perhaps the headlights. I have to persuade myself that I'm capable of understanding the feeling of this thing. Last night I was doing some studies of this to try to think about the feeling, and this was like a gesture study that I ended up coming up with, and I'm just like looking for what's the feeling of this thing. Okay, so once I become comfortable that I'm like, okay, I'm getting the feeling of this thing, so now I'm going to delete it. Okay, now we're going to go through like a full drawing process. So starting with the gesture. But now this time, because I'm planning on making a more of a full drawing, what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to do it really, really light. I'm going to try to draw it really nice and light. And I've got a reference photo, so here's something like this. Okay, so that gets us kind of started. Now that I've got a gesture in, now I'm going to start to go through and look for the structure of this thing. So this part right here, let's see. So I want to think of this part right here as a box, like that. So it's going to be one box, and then this is going to be another box right here. And that is the most basic structural consideration of this object. And I'm going to try to get those. So here's my first box. I'm going to go through and try to get my verticals correct. This is how I'll start to get it into perspective. I want to have my height to width relationship correct. So my eye level is going to be about there. Okay, there's one box. And here's the next. So I've got those two boxes that get me started on this car. Okay. So one thing that's really easy to notice is that this guy right here kind of comes up like this. And another thing that's really easy is that we've got basically where are you going? Uh-oh. Okay, sorry about that. And all I did was I mounted a kind of a 3D shape based on a triangle right there. Okay, these lines want to still stay nice and light. And another thing is that the shape of the back of this, the back of the car goes like that. If this part here wants to come upwards. Kind of cleaning up. I like to do a lot of cleanup when I work. Okay. Now another thing that we might start to think about is, where is the inside leg of this box and how's it working? See this right here? It's a box. And so the top plane here seems to be going about like this. So you can see we're seeing the underside of the top plane. It's something like this. So you see that, the top of that back window has to be in perspective with this and this. Now this is in perspective with this, right? They'd all be going back to a point in space. Okay. Now here's another thing that's cool. I'm going to get rid of this. Here's another thing that's cool on the car is if, as this shape here, if we find the middle of this front plane, say the middle of it is right there, and here's the middle of it, right like that. Now, if you go like this, cut this corner off, and cut this corner off. Remember when we were modifying? And if you check, you can check from here to here, and it wants to be in perspective with all of these things. okay? And now if I take this and I shoot backwards, and I take that and I shoot backwards, come through here and I erase out what's not part of it anymore. So this comes back, this comes back. And now this guy moves in. That's something I'm doing that's increasing and reducing the size of this, but I don't know what. Okay. So we're doing okay here. Now, we have to get the wheels to sit on this box. And the first thing that we want to find to get the wheels is we want to find where's the center of them and the axle. So the axle is in line with this. This looks like it does this. It looks like if we added like a little part of a cone and dropped it backwards, and then we could say that there's an axle right through here, and about a little past the edge of the car with the axle on both sides, a little past the edge of the car is where the middle of the wheel is. And so let's find the axle. So that's the axle on the front side. Let's find the axle on the back side now. So the axle on the back side, essentially if you draw a little like I want to make a little diagram right here, if I can see if I can help. So So that's a little structural diagram kind of showing you where those axles come up. See, I've got it here and here. Okay, and all of this stuff, that's just to help me find stuff. That's so we don't need that in our drawing. Now, we have to deal with the ellipses that are the wheels. And in order to get the ellipses, what you have to be good at is you have to be good at finding the minor axis. And the minor axis, as we studied before, is perpendicular to the face of the ellipse, okay? So on a tire, this right here is the face of the ellipse, okay? That's the face of the ellipse. And so we need a line that's perpendicular to the face of it that we can make our ellipse symmetrical around. And one thing, when you're drawing a car, the axle will always be perpendicular to the face of the tire. So if you looked at it from above, if you're looking down on a car, here's a car on top view, and if this is the axle, the wheel would be here and here. There's an axle, and you've got a wheel here and here. So this line here, the line of the axle, the direction of the axle is perpendicular to the face of the ellipse. So here's the line of the axle, meaning that this becomes my minor axis. So when I draw an ellipse here, it needs to be symmetrical around that line, okay? And my degree looks off with that one, so I can change it. But it's symmetrical around that. Okay? And this is in perspective. And the top too, perspective. So it's kind of a cylinder like that. So if this is my minor axis here, the first thing that I need to do is get this guy to sit symmetrically. And I can do this. I can draw in my major axis. So here's my minor axis, right there. And there's the major axis. If this and this are the same, this and these guys here are symmetrical across, that can be a big help. Okay. And the part of the drawing that we're in right now is we're trying to get our structure in order. And there would be a little ellipse in here. Okay? And because it's a tire, if we draw one more ellipse, same exact size, it's a little further out, because the tire itself is a small cylinder. So now we've just drawn a small cylinder. Okay. Get it on the other side. Can take the exact same, here's the minor axis, here's the point that I'm going to draw it at. I'm going to take this there, the major axis, perpendicular here, and I'm going to search for how far, if I find the top, just stay in perspective from here over. See there? I'm going to stay in perspective from there over. And this one is going to be, we're going to see wider, we're going to see a bigger degree out there. And again, I can go just double it up, it's a cylinder. Okay, that gets my front wheels in. Here's my minor axis for this back wheel, which I need. See this line and this line? Those are this line, this line, and this line, and this line. They're all going to a vanishing point. So this here and this, they'd be receding to the exact same vanishing point, okay? And that's how I'm going to establish the height of the back wheel. And again, if this and that are correlated, what I need to do is I need to be, here's my major axis, right there. And I'm going to end up off my page a little bit, which I'm okay with. And now this one is smaller in degree than the front one. And I need to build it symmetrically into here. Okay, so it would be built symmetrically into there. And there's another tire back this way. This tire and that tire where they reach. there's another tire, and you just see the bottom of it. I could draw it all the way through and get really correct on it, but I think we're okay. And plus, we're just not going to see it because we're going to put this fender in. Okay, so the next thing that we need to consider are the fenders. And the fenders are cool. From here, they come out into the car this way, right? So that it comes down like this and then over into the fender. And here's your line of perspective. It comes over into the fender. So we can establish that part of the fender really easily. And I'm going to end it right there because they kind of end like that. And then it just goes up and over the wheel from the two sides, very much like when we were bending a plane. Okay, so let's say over here, it ends, this plane ends about here. So it starts here and ends here in both instances. So these go up and around, and they're going to come and end. That one is going to end right there. And this one goes up and over, and it ends right there. Okay. So we've got that fender pretty good. And this here, what we need to do is we need to go this way. And you've got this line and this line, and that's how you get it in perspective. You use all the lines that are going in that direction. You want to be constant with them. And establish the far side and the close side, and then where you need to connect to. So this here, I didn't get that just right. This here on the other side of the car establishes where you want to connect to. And so you go up, and you have to connect to that one, and then up, and you're going to connect to that one. So that's how this gets that cool look. Go in with your eraser and erase out all the stuff that you don't need. I really made a mess putting this thing together. Which is totally fine. And the only other detail that I want to participate in drawing with you is the lights. Okay, and the lights, what we need to do is the lights sit in here. So what we need to know is we need to know where the minor axis for the lights are. So the lights sit, one of them is here and the other one is here, right? And essentially they go this way. So we need a line that's perpendicular to the face of them. And if I take one light and I put it right there, and the other light and I put it right there, the line of the minor axis is going to be coming from this direction. So I could go like this. I'm going to draw a little box here. There's a little box. And then I want to be in perspective on the other side. So here's a little box on the other side. See how I'm lining up across the form? In perspective on the other side. And I need, if I find the center of that box, here's how we always find centers, by using that X, and here, and here. And now the minor axis passes directly through the center, okay? I'm going to look for, and the minor axis comes off of this direction, going to that vanishing point. There it is. Now I need to be symmetrical around that. And there I am. Okay, and these essentially are modified cones. So if I start out with a cone like that, and I start out with a cone like that, and then I just modify the cone, it just goes around. So it's a modified cone. They sit in there. And come in with my eraser and do some cleanup. Nobody needs to know all the work that I had to do to get here. Okay, and then the last thing that I want to do is I think I want to draw one of the tires, and then that's it. Okay, so my minor axis goes like this. We need a little cylinder like that, and then that's mounted on a larger one. And then the spokes attached just directly across. These ones will be connecting in here. Okay, at this point in the drawing, what we've dealt with is we've dealt with the gesture and the structure. The next thing for us to do would be to pick a light direction and start to deal with it as form. And the object essentially is a black object But if we just take any light direction, we can say, okay, let's say I want to say that the light is working very similar to how it's working in the piece that we're looking at. So this is the top plane. It's moving towards the top plane. And this would be the top plane, so it's going to be lighter. However, it's not going to be light because it's painted black. But look at this detail here beside it. So that would be a middle tone. And then as it comes up, it's going to be lighter, because that's a middle tone object instead of this, which is a dark tone object. All of these guys are in the light out there, but then the form over here is back into the dark. I kind of have this a little bit wrong. This is a little bit more, whoa. A little bit more like this. So that's all a little lighter. And then this is the side plane of the car. It's darker. And this is on the side plane of the cube. So it's the darker side. And this is facing upwards, so it's on the lighter side. Now inside the car would really be an underplane. Watch this little black part here kind of turn a corner into the light. And if at home you guys are doing this, what I recommend you do is I recommend that you draw this in charcoal. Because the shading is so fast. But if you only have like a ballpoint pen or something going like that, if you don't work too big, it doesn't take that long. Dark side of this, and there's a light side of it. Okay, here's the dark side, moving up into the light, down on the dark side, up into the light, up into the light. Okay. These guys have a little side plane where there's a dark side of it. And then they move up into the light. And then they move up into the light. So there's a dark side, it goes around. And then it moves up into the light. Here is this form here, there's a small dark side. And then it's painted black, but then it moves up into the light. Little dark side in there. Okay. Now, local value is not black inside of this, but it is dark. Clean that out. There's a highlight that cuts through here. I'm just using my eraser, erasing it out. Okay. And the local value of the tires is really dark. And then it turns up into the light. But this side is darker. doesn't work. This goes to the other side. At some point, this meets the other side. And I think I want to say it's about there. I'm just drawing a line across, looking for where this guy would come in contact there. And the last thing we need is a steering wheel. And if you draw in the steering column is your de facto minor axis. So it's got to be symmetrical around that. Okay, and I think that's as far as I want to take it.